This is the Extra Point Podcast from Arizona's family.
Well, I don't know what we have been tuning into Twitter more to find out over the past couple months. The Kevin Durant news, when the Robert Sarver investigation would wrap up. We got our answer today on the Robert Sarver investigation, and he's suspended for a year, fined $10 million. Here to talk about it on the Extra Point Podcast and on Arizona's family Extra Point television show, Gerald Bourget of PHNX, Sun's host. And Gerald, it's been kind of a crazy morning, so your reaction when you saw the news?
Yeah, I mean, it just feels insufficient. It feels like a slap on the wrist in terms of the punishment that was handed down by the NBA. When you look at how many people they interviewed, how many documents they went through, just a 1-year suspension and a $10 million fine for a guy who's worth upwards of $80 million. It just doesn't seem like enough. And it does feel like a slap in the face for the people that came forward and had the courage to do so and share their story under threat of a guy who is historically litigious. So I'm very disappointed with what the NBA found. It's not just about getting Sarver out either. It's about a pattern within this toxic environment that came forward in the investigation as well. There weren't other specific names that were mentioned, but you read these stories, you hear these accounts, and it's just sickening how much was allowed to go on and how much change is going to be needed within this organization moving forward.
And as we compare this to the Donald Sterling investigation, obviously there was a smoking gun there. You had something on tape that you could play back. How much of this is a result of maybe not having a smoking gun?
I think that's definitely part of it, and it's sad that that has to be a requisite for real change being enacted, because we remember the kind of shock value of hearing Donald Sterling's voice on that tape, and based on what the investigation brought forth, there's more than enough substance there for real action to be taken. But like you said, because there is no video, because there is no audio for people to hear it and react to it, it is sad that that's what it takes, because there should be more than enough within these pages to elicit real action, and it's just not enough for whatever reason.
And, and in this social media world, the old days where somebody would come out and get in front of a camera and own it from the organization. Now we get a statement, and we're probably not going to hear anything from the team until media day, and that seems like that's going to be pretty buttoned up as well. So what sort of reaction do you feel like we'll end up getting from the team here moving forward about today's news?
That's a good question, because you've seen a couple of players already tweet their reactions. Jay Crowder tweeted "wow" this morning. Jamal Crawford, who played for both the Clippers under Donald Sterling and for the Suns under Sarver, tweeted Sterling 2.0 today. So we're starting to see a couple of player reactions, but this is going to take a united front for anything to change. And I'm curious to see how they go about it, because last year when the ESPN investigation dropped, it was very much, that's not the Sarver I know. I'm not going to comment on that type of thing until we know more. And now we know more. Now the NBA has handed down its investigative findings. So Chris Paul, who played for that Clippers team and who was part of that walkout and taking their jerseys off and the change that they were able to enact, I am curious how they go about it in this case, because unlike that time, there's a very real scenario where Robert Sarver is back in the building a year from now and that power dynamic returns. So I am curious to see how they handle it. A lot of the players on this team are young guys, and, they do have the leverage to really sway some opinions if they do stage something similar to that. I don't know if they will, and it's unfair that the onus is always on the players to enact change in these situations, but that's just the fact of the matter. If they speak up and if they speak out against this, including general manager James Jones and Monty Williams, who kind of deflected these questions last year, I do think their words will hold sway with the league at some point.
And what sort of impact do you think going forward this will have on a team that's trying to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, that had all the negative energy from this investigation and just the absolute meltdown against the Dallas Mavericks in Game 7 of the playoffs? Is this something that helps them turn the page, or just another deal where they kind of lead the league in drama here?
I think it's the latter, honestly, because this situation trumps anything with basketball, and I think it will be hard to focus. I know last year when the ESPN story dropped, it sort of galvanized the team from a win-loss perspective, if you look at the run that they went on after that. But this is tough because they are going to be the ones that are being asked these questions that they should not have to be accountable for. It puts a lot of added stress on them. It just puts them in an uncomfortable position, really, when you look at this guy is still going to be their boss as of right now, a year from now, and they're the ones that are having to be held accountable for the actions of people that are above them. It's unfair to them. I do think this could be something of a distraction, especially considering everything that this team was already having to deal with heading into the season. You want to talk about Game 7, DA and Monty's sideline blow up, Jay Crowder's social media activity over the last few weeks. Like, it's just been one thing after another. And this obviously is way more important than any of that. But it will make it hard for a basketball team to play basketball. That's just, these guys are human beings. They hear all this stuff just like the rest of us. This takes a mental and emotional toll on them reading these stories too. And it's just a really unfortunate nature of reality at this point.
It is, and it's like, well, we still have to do our job in the media. We have to ask the questions and go in there and get the answers or get the non-answers that we've gotten. Or, when you went up to Sean Marks this year at the NBA Summer League, by the way, I was impressed by you going up and asking about the Kevin Durant deal to Sean Marks, even though he didn't want to talk about it. Going forward, just with the Durant deal, you think that's dead?
I don't think it's completely dead. I think you look at the Nets and they're a highly combustible group. You look at the trade deadline, obviously, as a time when talks could resurface, depending on how the Suns are doing, depending on how the Nets are doing. I think they're putting a lot of faith in Ben Simmons regaining form for them to be a championship contender. But if Durant already came to them over the summer and wanted out, it's going to take them being near the top of the East by that point for him to have changed his mind on that. I don't know if I see that being a reality. And I do think the Suns, by kind of basically running it back, they put all their eggs in the Kevin Durant basket. It didn't work out. They didn't bring about much meaningful change for the roster, but they still have that flexibility. They still have all their picks to make a deal for a superstar if one becomes available at the deadline.
Well, I guess the one thing about the situation that Phoenix Suns basketball is in, there's always a lot to talk about. So tell us how we can find your stuff online and where we can watch your show.
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter at Gerald Bourget. You can read all of my son's content at gophnx.com. And you can check out our podcast, the PHNX Suns podcast, wherever you listen to your pods.
All right. Thanks for zooming in and joining us today on short notice.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
The Extra Point Podcast is a production of 3TV, CBS5, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.